I never thought I'd be standing in the back of St. Matthew's Cathedral watching my ex-husband marry someone else. But sometimes life demands you show up for the finale of a story you helped write. The irony wasn't lost on me that David had chosen the same venue where we planned our own wedding 5 years ago, before everything fell apart. Before I discovered his gambling addiction. Before I learned about the debts. Before I realized that the charming, successful investment banker I've fallen in love with was actually a house of cards waiting to collapse. My name is Alexandra, and I've spent the last 12 years building one of the most successful business consulting firms in the city. I specialize in financial restructuring for high net worth individuals, which means I know exactly how to hide assets, protect wealth, and structure agreements that look simple on the surface but contain layers of protection underneath. It's a skill that has served my clients well over the years, and as I watched David adjust his tie at the altar, I reflected on how that same expertise had saved me from complete financial ruin when our relationship imploded. The bride, Amanda, was everything David thought he wanted. 26 years old, blonde, with a trust fund from her pharmaceutical Harris grandmother, and absolutely no understanding of financial planning beyond which designer handbag to buy next. She'd swept into David's life 8 months after our divorce was finalized, completely smitten with his supposed success and charm. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly documenting his gambling debts for months before our separation, building a case that would protect both of us from his financial mistakes. The ceremony was beautiful, I had to admit. Amanda had spared no expense, flying in flowers from Ecuador and hiring a string quartet that probably cost more than most people's cars. David looked nervous, tugging at his collar and scanning the crowd with the same restless energy I remember from our worst fights about money. I wondered if Amanda had any idea that the Rolex on his wrist was a fake, or that his investment portfolio was mostly fictional. As the newlyweds made their way down the aisle after exchanging vows, David's eyes found mine in the crowd. For a moment, his confident smile faltered. He knew I knew. The question was whether he told Amanda any of the truth about his situation, or if he was still playing the role of the successful banker with unlimited prospects. The reception was held at the country club where Amanda's family had been members for 3 generations. Crystal chandeliers, imported marble floors, and enough flowers to stock a greenhouse. I'd been invited only because David's mother had insisted, claiming it would look petty to exclude his ex-wife when we parted on such good terms. Mrs. Harrison had always liked me, probably because I'd helped David maintain a facade of stability during our marriage. What she didn't know was that I'd also been the one to discover his addiction and orchestrate our divorce in a way that protected both our assets from his creditors. I took my assigned seat at table 12, strategically placed between David's college friends and some distant relatives. The placement was deliberate, Amanda's subtle way of acknowledging my presence while making it clear I wasn't part of the inner circle. I didn't mind. It gave me a perfect view of the head table and a chance to observe the dynamics I'd been monitoring from afar for months. During cocktail hour, I made small talk with mutual friends, most of whom expressed surprise that David had remarried so quickly. Amanda's lovely, his law school roommate Jake had confided, but she's got expensive taste. Hope David's ready for that lifestyle. I'd simply smiled and agreed that David certainly had his hands full now. The dinner service was impeccable, course after course of carefully prepared food that Amanda barely touched while she flitted between tables, accepting congratulations and showing off her emerald-cut diamond. David sat at the head table, playing the role of the attentive husband while periodically checking his phone. I recognized the gesture. He was monitoring something, probably his betting accounts or tracking some investment he'd made without Amanda's knowledge. As the evening progressed, I watched Amanda work the room with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. She was gracious with the older relatives, charming with David's friends, and dismissive of anyone she deemed unimportant. When she finally made her way to my table during the dessert course, I could see the calculation in her eyes. "Alexandra," she said, her voice dripping with honey-sweet condescension. "I'm so glad you could make it tonight. David speaks of you so fondly." She was holding a decorative box of tissues, the kind you might find in an expensive hotel powder room. "I thought you might need these, since you're probably crying about what you lost." The table fell silent. David's cousin Emma looked mortified, while Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Amanda's smile was perfectly practiced, the kind that looked sweet in photographs but carried a razor's edge in person. I calmly opened my purse and pulled out a manila envelope I'd been carrying all evening. Amanda, there's something about loss you should understand. Her confidence wavered slightly as she noticed the legal letterhead visible through the envelope's window. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up slowly, my voice perfectly level. I helped draft your prenuptial agreement. As David's former business partner in several investment ventures, I had to ensure all potential liabilities were properly disclosed. The color drained from Amanda's face. What are you talking about? Our prenup was handled by David's lawyer. Yes, Harrison, Mitchell and Associates. I've been contracting with them for complex financial structuring for 8 years. I opened the envelope and pulled out a copy of the document I knew by heart. Every clause, every protection, every disclosure requirement, I wrote most of it myself. Amanda grabbed for the papers, her perfectly manicured hands shaking slightly. This is impossible. David said you two had a clean break. No business connections. We did have a clean break. That's exactly why I was the perfect person to structure an agreement that would protect you from his financial obligations. I watched her scan the document, seeing the moment she reached the section I'd been waiting for her to discover. Page 7, Section 12. The Gambling Debt Disclosure Clause. Her face went white. Gambling debts? What gambling debts? The entire table was listening now, pretending to focus on their dessert while hanging on every word. I kept my voice calm and professional, the same tone I used when explaining complex financial structures to my clients. The agreement requires full disclosure of any debts exceeding $50,000. David acknowledged gambling obligations totaling $347,000 as of the signing date, 6 weeks ago. I paused, letting that number sink in. Those debts are specifically excluded from any marital property protections. Amanda sank into an empty chair, still clutching the papers. He told me he had some credit card debt, maybe $20,000. He said the prenup was just to protect my trust fund. Your trust fund is protected, I confirmed. But according to the terms David agreed to, any debts he accumulated through gambling, whether before or during the marriage, remain his sole responsibility. If creditors pursue collection, they can't touch your assets, but they can certainly pursue his. But he doesn't have any assets, Amanda whispered, the realization dawning. The apartment is rented. The car is leased. His investment accounts are mostly fictional, I finished gently. I'm sorry, Amanda. I thought he'd been honest with you about his situation. The tissue box sat forgotten on the table as Amanda buried her face in her hands. Around us, wedding guests continued their conversations, but our table had become an island of shocked silence. Jake cleared his throat awkwardly. Alexandra, are you saying David owes over $300,000 to gamblers? To various creditors, yes. Online betting platforms, some private poker games, and a few individuals who started as friends but became creditors when the amounts got serious. I'd spent months documenting every transaction during our divorce proceedings. The prenup includes a specific schedule of these obligations. Amanda looked up, mascara smudging beneath her eyes. How long have you known? I discovered the debts about 8 months before David and I separated. I spent our last 6 months together documenting everything and preparing for a divorce in a way that would protect both our assets from his creditors. I sat back down, my voice becoming more personal. I loved him too, Amanda, but I wasn't going to let his addiction destroy my life's work. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice was barely a whisper. I tried to have coffee with you in February, remember? You said you were too busy with wedding planning to discuss ancient history with David's ex-wife. I'd reached out several times actually. Amanda had made it clear she wasn't interested in my perspective on anything. I'd also sent a letter to your address in March, but it was returned unopened. Emma, who'd been listening with growing horror, finally spoke up. Amanda, what does this mean for your marriage? I answered before Amanda could respond. It means she's legally protected from David's debts, but she's also married to someone who owes more money than most people make in 5 years, money that's owed to people who don't typically accept payment plans. Amanda's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and the remaining color drained from her face. It's from David. He says he needs to step outside to take an important call. On his wedding night, Jake shook his head. That's not good. I'd been tracking David's behavior patterns for years, the urgent phone calls, the secretive text messages, the sudden need to handle business at inappropriate times. Amanda, you need to understand that this isn't going away. These aren't debts that disappear with time or good intentions. She stood up abruptly, smoothing her wedding dress with shaking hands. I need to find David. As she walked away, still clutching the prenup papers, Emma turned to me with wide eyes. Alexandra, did you really design their prenup to expose David's gambling? I designed it to protect Amanda from financial ruin, I corrected. David chose to sign an agreement that required full disclosure of his debts because he thought he could hide the extent of his problems. I just made sure the truth was documented in legal terms. Jake leaned forward. But why help protect her? She's marrying your ex-husband. I considered the question while watching Amanda cross the reception hall, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. Because I've been where she is. I know what it's like to love someone and slowly realize they've been lying about everything that matters. The difference is, I had 12 years of business experience and financial knowledge to protect myself. Amanda has a trust fund, and no idea how predatory her husband's creditors can be. Through the ballroom's tall windows, I could see David pacing on the terrace, his phone pressed to his ear and his free hand gesturing frantically. Even from this distance, his body language screamed desperation. 20 minutes later, Amanda returned to the reception, looking like she aged 5 years in a single conversation. Her lipstick was gone, her hair was disheveled, and she was no longer carrying the prenup papers. She walked directly to my table, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. "You're right," she said simply. "About everything." I nodded, feeling no satisfaction in being correct about such a devastating situation. "What did David tell you?" "That his creditors have been calling all week. That he was hoping the wedding presents would include enough cash gifts to make a payment and buy him more time." Her voice was hollow, defeated. "He asked if I could access my trust fund early for a temporary loan to help with a business opportunity." The table exchanged glances. Everyone understood the implications. "Amanda," I said carefully, "you need to contact your own lawyer first thing Monday morning. Not David's lawyer, your own. And you need to move your trust fund to a different bank, preferably one David has never used." She nodded slowly. "The prenup, does it really protect me?" "Every clause I wrote protects you, but only if you enforce it properly." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. "This is my personal attorney. She specializes in financial protection for high net worth individuals. Tell her I referred you." Amanda took the card with trembling fingers. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 3 years ago, I was sitting in a different church, signing papers to protect myself from the same man. I know exactly how this story ends if you don't have good legal representation." The reception continued around us, but our little corner had become a crisis management center. Emma had moved closer to Amanda, offering quiet support, while Jake kept glancing toward the terrace where David was still on his phone. "There's something else," Amanda said quietly. "David's been getting mail at my apartment. Official-looking envelopes that he always takes and says are just business correspondence. After reading this prenup, I'm wondering." "Collection notices," I confirmed, "probably from multiple creditors. The gambling debts I documented were just the ones I could verify during our divorce. There are likely others." Amanda closed her eyes. "Our honeymoon, we're supposed to leave for Italy tomorrow. David insisted we use my credit card for the hotel because his was temporarily frozen due to a banking error." "Cancel the trip," I said immediately, "or go alone. But don't let him use your credit for anything, and don't access your trust fund for any reason he suggests." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through her contacts. "I need to call my grandmother. She set up the trust fund with specific protections, but I never paid attention to the details because I thought I'd never need them." As Amanda walked away to make her calls, Jake leaned across the table. "Alexandra, this is incredible. You essentially saved that woman's financial future with a prenup she didn't even understand." "I saved her future by documenting the truth," I corrected. "David created this situation by lying to both of us about the extent of his problems." Through the windows, I watched David end his phone call and turned back toward the reception. His face was grim, his earlier wedding day joy completely evaporated. He scanned the room until his eyes found our table, and I saw the moment he realized Amanda was missing, and I was still there. He walked over with the measured pace of someone trying to appear calm while internally panicking. Alexandra, I didn't expect to see you here so late in the evening. Your mother invited me. Congratulations on your marriage. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Where's Amanda? He was looking around the room, his anxiety barely concealed. Making some phone calls. Wedding planning doesn't end with the ceremony, apparently. I watched his reaction carefully. She seemed very interested in understanding the financial protections you both signed. David's jaw tightened. What did you tell her? The truth? That you disclosed gambling debts totaling over $300,000 in your prenuptial agreement. I paused, letting him process the fact that his secret was no longer a secret. She was surprised. Apparently, she thought your only debts were some minor credit card balances. You had no right to interfere with my marriage. His voice was low and angry, but he couldn't make a scene at his own wedding reception. I had every right to explain a legal document I helped draft. Amanda is now my client, actually. She's hired my firm to ensure all the protections in your agreement are properly implemented. David sank into the chair Amanda had vacated, his head in his hands. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. These people don't wait for convenient payment schedules. I understand perfectly. That's why I spent months documenting everything during our divorce. And why I structured Amanda's prenup to protect her from exactly this situation. I leaned forward slightly. The question is, what are you going to do now that she knows the truth? Before he could answer, Amanda returned to the table, her phone still in hand and a newfound determination in her posture. David, we need to talk. Now. He looked between us, realizing that his carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. Amanda, sweetheart, let me explain. No, her voice was firm, strong. I've been talking to my grandmother and my lawyer. We're going home, and tomorrow morning I'm implementing every protection clause in that prenup Alexandra wrote. David stood up slowly. What does that mean? It means your gambling debts remain your responsibility alone. It means I'm moving my assets to accounts you can't access. And it means our marriage starts with complete honesty, or it doesn't continue at all. The transformation in Amanda was remarkable. The naive, trusting bride had been replaced by a woman who understood exactly what she was dealing with. I felt a surge of professional pride, not just in the legal protections I'd built into her agreement, but in her decision to use them. David looked at me one last time, his expression a mixture of anger and resignation. You've destroyed everything. I documented everything, I corrected. You destroyed it months before Amanda ever knew your name. As the newlyweds left their own reception early, Emma turned to me with amazement. That was the most interesting wedding I've ever attended. 3 months later, I received a thank you card from Amanda. She'd successfully protected her trust fund, implemented all the prenup protections, and was working with David on a strict financial rehabilitation plan overseen by both their lawyers. The marriage was surviving, but only because Amanda now understood exactly what she'd married into, and had the legal protections to maintain her independence. David's gambling debts were being addressed through a structured payment plan that didn't touch Amanda's assets. He was attending counseling and had agreed to complete financial oversight for the next 5 years. Whether their relationship would survive his recovery process remained to be seen, but Amanda's financial future was secure. I kept the tissue box she'd given me that night, not as a memento of revenge, but as a reminder that sometimes the best way to help someone is to ensure they have the tools to help themselves. After all, the tears she'd expected me to cry had ended up being her own tears of relief when she realized she wasn't trapped by someone else's financial mistakes. The prenup I'd written had served its purpose perfectly, protecting Amanda from David's debts while forcing complete disclosure of his financial situation. Sometimes the most devastating revelations come wrapped in legal protections, and sometimes the person trying to humiliate you accidentally hands you the platform to save them from their own ignorance. In the end, Amanda learned that tissues are for wiping away tears of sadness. But they work just as well for tears of relief when you discover you're not as powerless as someone wanted you to believe.